All right. Hi, I'm Ryan Kilpatrick with the Oklahoma City-based public affairs firm Amber Integrated. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Quarantine Corner, our effort to bring you engaging and timely content during the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see, we're coming to you remotely via Zoom today, working from home like we hope most everyone else is. I think the commissioner, he may be on the list of essential folks and maybe from the office there, but he's got a great team working, and I know they're kind of following all the guidelines of the department. But we hope these interviews bring you informative content during this different time and set of circumstances. We've previously brought in healthcare experts from across the state, education, and business leaders. And today, as I mentioned, we have the great pleasure of welcoming on Oklahoma's Insurance Commissioner, Glen Mulready. Commissioner Mulready is one of our statewide elected officials heading up the state insurance department, and he took office after the 2018 elections. An election that, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner, in that primary, you still hold, I think, a record for a statewide office number of votes in a primary from the 2018 ballot.
We do. We just ignore the little asterisk that it was because marijuana was on the ballot. But
hey, as we're seeing today, circumstances can change a lot of things. So prior to his election as commissioner, Glenn was in the House as a state representative for 8 years, serving Jenks and the surrounding area where he and his wife, Sally, and their 3 sons still call home. He was a longtime insurance industry professional and previously served as the president of the Tulsa and State Health Underwriters Associations. In his role at the department, Commissioner Mulready is responsible for leading the agency in oversight of insurance companies, agents, adjusters, bail bondsmen, funeral home directors, real estate appraisers, service warranty companies, pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, and I'm sure there's a few more I've missed in there, but needless to say, the commissioner's a very busy man, and I appreciate him taking the time to be with me today to let our viewers and listeners know what his role is and what he does for the state. So with that, Commissioner Mulready.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's funny to hear just even that it announced publicly that I was elected in 2018, because it has been quite the first year for me with most tornadoes in our state. We've had the worst flooding in our history, and now a pandemic, really just in slightly over a year in office. So.
As you mentioned, as we were getting warmed up, the locusts may be next from all we know. So, but you'll have the state ready for it, as I'm sure you, as all of our leaders will. And you've had, as I mentioned, you've had a ton of experience with the insurance industry over the years, working for various companies and around the industry as an agent. You were chairman of the House Insurance Committee during your time in the state capitol. So prior to being elected as commissioner, tell us, I guess, how that kind of uniquely prepared you for the job you're currently in your role of regulating the insurance industry.
Yeah, so I have been, literally, I have known nothing but the insurance business my whole life, my whole career. I spent about 12 years on the property and casualty side of the business in another state as an agent, as a broker. And then when I relocated to my adopted state of Oklahoma, where my wife is from and where she grew up, really ended up on the health insurance side of things, and spent over 20 years on that side of the business. So I've been with some property casualty side of things. I've been on the health insurance. I've been an agent. I've worked for two of the largest health insurers in the state of Oklahoma. So I really have had quite a varied experience within the industry, which has proven very helpful in doing the job. There's just not a lot of things that come up now. When I first came in, you mentioned a number of other areas that we do regulate. And I know right up front when I was campaigning, I admitted I do not know a lot about bail bonds, but I've since learned some. And of course, I also said that I thought that was a good thing that I didn't know a lot about bail bonds.
Hopefully only learning in your role as commissioner.
Right. And so anyways, yeah, I think that has gave me my 35 years in the insurance business, gave me quite a well-rounded perspective coming into the job.
Sure. Well, as I look out the window here today, and I'm sure it's the same view for you, it's a kind of a typical spring day here in Oklahoma. You kind of expect to deal with some of the natural disasters that can come along with this time of year. As we have our share of tornadoes, I think we may have a watch out today, and other severe weather events. We're just kind of in the heart of that as we deal with this COVID crisis, which is a totally different animal. So people, I think people kind of see the impact of COVID-19, in their daily lives, whether it be through their health insurance or it is a direct impact to them. But it's really broader than that. Can you talk to us about how during this crisis, what you've been able to do to make sure Oklahomans are protected during this really extremely vulnerable time for them?
Yeah, it has been. It is a it's a unique situation, Ryan, versus responding to a tornado or, like we are today and probably will be tomorrow, responding to some tornado damage in certain areas or hail damage in certain areas. But the pandemic is just quite different. And so we've had to try to, what I've tried to do is stay ahead of things and just be thinking constantly about what can we, I see our role at the insurance department, our number one role, number one priority is protecting consumers. And so how do we do that? How do we do that better? What do we need to do to protect consumers through this pandemic? Meanwhile, balancing that with being fair and reasonable to insurers and to the business side of things. We want to be known as a business-friendly state and encourage more companies to come and do business here, more insurers to come and do business, so that Oklahomans have more choices. I've talked a lot about giving Oklahomans more choices. So you can't rule with a heavy hand and then be attractive to insurers to come and do business here. And so I've tried to keep more of a see my role more from a guidance standpoint versus heavy regulating standpoint. So we came out though when this first happened, I think on March 18th, with our first bulletin, and that was really calling upon the health insurers to. A lot of that was just to, hey, take note, be evaluating your resources. How are you going to handle this COVID-19 pandemic? Let's take a look at your telehealth services. Those need to be beefed up quickly. In fact, we had an insurer here in the state that had no telehealth capabilities, no telemedicine capabilities when this happened. I was on the phone with them the day after that bulletin and learned that, and I kind of chided them about that. And to their credit, within a week, they stood up telemedicine services for all of their members. So, we requested that all co-pays be waived. We were trying to think of how do you reduce barriers or remove barriers and reduce hurdles for folks to access care during this crisis. And I've been excited to see companies step forward. I mean, health insurers have, like the example I just gave you, have gone strongly towards telemedicine. Other carriers have expanded greatly the providers that they use for telemedicine to try to reduce that face-to-face interaction. They are now, some of the plans out there, reimbursing for text responses and email and things that have never been done before, certainly not in the state of Oklahoma. And so I've been proud of the industry. And now we're seeing a lot of the personal auto carriers and others step up too on the property and casualty side. I just might add that a lot of that has come about, from encouragement from our office as opposed to mandating from our office.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we've tried to do, and from what I'm seeing, I think it has worked well. I mean, insurers have just stepped forward. I applauded in a press release one of our insurers who was the first one to step forward and waive the typically they have an exclusion on the personal auto policy. If you're delivering for commercial purposes, that's not covered under your personal auto policy. And one of our insurance carriers stepped forward and said, hey, we realize people are delivering groceries, they're delivering medicine during this. We're going to waive that exclusion in our personal auto policy during this emergency. And I issued a press release applauding them for that, and then suddenly got the attention of some other carriers who started stepping forward and doing the same thing too. So that's why I say I've been proud of seeing the carriers and the industry step forward and do the right thing.
Yeah, it's great. And I know once you raise the awareness around those things, it really helps to kind of make it happen more broadly in the industry. So I think you and your office should be applauded for that. As consumers in this crisis, not, really, I think seeing telemedicine's use throughout is a great example that you really touched on there. More broadly, insurance and its many related services have been kind of considered essential under federal and state standards under the guidelines that are in place through May the 1st. And I know those are kind of being developed as we speak by the governor. Could you speak to the importance of that designation for consumers and companies, kind of how your office is helping industry broadly run as smoothly during this crisis? Whether it be, claims still need to be paid, whether they're health or home or auto related. And as we mentioned, we may have some storms that roll in response to that, to make sure that consumers, there's life may have slowed down, but it's still going on, and how really your office is helping to keep that run smoothly during this time.
Yeah, and that was early on in this. That was the questions or conversations that we were getting early on, was about, even from insurance agents calling, are we essential businesses? And we assured them that on a standard basis, nationally, when these things have come up, insurance is considered, is under the financial services heading and is essential services. Now, my wife might argue about how essential I am, but the government thinks so. So I'm here at work. But we've got our team. We've got this beautiful new building that we built that we had a ribbon cutting on March 3rd. Had the governor here, and here it sits pretty empty. We've got about 6 people, skeleton crew coming in, but everyone's working remotely from home, and it's going quite well. I had a WebEx call yesterday with all my managers and supervisors, just kind of checking in, and I kind of heard the same thing from everyone, that it's really working surprisingly well. And I also made an effort last couple of weeks to just call the CEOs of each insurance company who's domesticated here in Oklahoma. I haven't reached all of them at all, but I've just made an effort to call in my spare time in between different calls to just check in and see how they were doing. And every one of them, without exception, I think has said that same sort of thinking, that it's gone surprisingly well. That we've got all our folks working from home or working remotely, and things are going along quite well. So, but I think getting to your original question, the essential business side of things, the fact is people still need to have claims taken care of. They still need a car repaired. And they're working at essential business. They need to get around. Granted, a lot of folks aren't getting around, but their home, their shelter needs to be repaired. There's a life insurance claim. The finances are needed. So those services still are greatly needed, and it's a great industry to be a part of.
Great. One of the things I wanted to say, and you touched on this briefly kind of in your response there around how your office is working kind of during this crisis. You said, kind of a skeleton crew, but everyone working remotely. And that seems to be a trend that, a lot of, regardless of industry, it's pretty being widely adopted during this pandemic. And it seems to be something that, most people think will take hold to some degree going forward, in the sense from a government agency and a regulator standpoint, and also kind of for the industries that you oversee. How do what long-term, changes do you see as a result of this? And as that, really as the workforce changes potentially around what, based on how we're adapting to this crisis?
Yeah, I think, what we've been saying all along and like to say is our doors are closed, but the insurance department is open. And so we are still open for business. Again, we're doing a little differently. We can't walk in our front doors and buy a study manual to get a new insurance license. And I might comment on that. We use a testing vendor, as does every other state in the country. And when they shut things down, those vendors shut down their testing centers because they're typically bringing together groups of people. And there was no online option. And so we were shut down, as was every other state, as far as licensing. Well, I challenged my team and just said, listen, it's not okay for us to just say we can't issue licenses till those open back up, because they'd already said they weren't going to open until at least mid-April. And so we came forward with a temporary license solution, and I think Texas beat us by 1 day. We're the second state in the country to come forward with temporary license. Now most of them have stood up different temporary license things, but we were out early with that, and we came forward with a form, and it's a manual process, so it's not easy, but I just thought it was important that all these people being laid off, you got folks that are trying to enter a new career. We need to back to the removing of barriers and lowering hurdles when it comes to licensing. So we've been working that, but all of the business of the office here, the department is going on, but going forward, I mean, we're talking about that now, and how do we phase back into and how does our doing our mission, and how do we do that going forward, and does anything change? And so we're making those decisions right now with my chief of staff and even our head of HR. We've got a call later today to discuss that exact thing. I've laid a few things out there that I want us to consider, but I think you'll have a lot of businesses that are evaluating things differently, even as we talked about a minute ago, office space. And, you think of all those people, the CEOs that I've talked to have said things are working pretty well. I think when all is said and done, there's a number of folks that'll look back and think, gosh, that went okay. Now, what are we paying for our office lease? And consider changing that up a little, and I could see us doing similar. And, the handling of public coming and going from a building, whether that's ours or someone else. We do a lot more online? Do a lot more meetings like this, where someone doesn't have to travel? I think a lot of that sticks. Yeah.
That makes total sense. Well, finally, and on a more personal note, I know your family, like I mentioned, is in the Tulsa area, and I know that's throughout your time in public office, whether it be in the House, State House, or as insurance commissioner. It has to have been a challenge. So, being away from the family, I know you kind of go back and forth between Oklahoma City and Tulsa in your current role as well. Give us a little sense of how being safer at home as during this whole time has impacted you and the family.
Yeah, personally, well, yeah, I have since 8 years in the house, and then a year or so here now. So 9 years, I have spent a lot of time in Oklahoma City. I've kept an apartment here for those first 8 years. I recently bought a house here in Oklahoma, just a small house that I stay at, and Sally holds down the fort with three boys. We've got three great sons that are 16, 18, and 20. And I'll tell you, we were just talking about it, I think it was just this past weekend, that I think we will look back at this time as such a unique opportunity with them.
Mm-hmm.
They're 16, 18, and 20. We're about to sort of lose them,
Right.
Yet, just prior to that happening, they're sort of forced to be with us quite a bit. And so, for the most part, I spend about 3 nights a week over here in Oklahoma City, and then back in Tulsa. We have a Tulsa office. We've just got about 8 employees, so I try to spend a day and a half or so in that office each week. But it's interesting. I did try to work remotely because I've been coming to the office, but work remotely from home last week, Monday and Tuesday, and I'm at the dining room table. My wife is in her office. She's a realtor. She's got her own office, and there's a son on the breakfast nook table who's doing a Zoom class from college class on there. So it's just kind of funny trying to find different quiet corners of the house to operate. But all in all, things have gone well at home, and that's mainly thanks to my wife.
Well, hey, at least you know where credit's due there, and I'm glad to hear that things are going well. Well, we're about out of time, but I really, really appreciate you taking the time today, and I want to give you the opportunity before we wrap up here on this episode of Quarantine Corner, just to give you a chance to conclude, or give us a sense of, are there any resources you want to make sure that Oklahomans and consumers generally are aware of, whether it be through the insurance department, anything on your website, or resources for consumers to stay safe and informed during the remainder of this crisis?
Yeah, I think as far as a resource, I would certainly direct them to our website. Matter of fact, I did a TV interview the other day, and they were just greatly applauding our website. When I came in, we made some cuts in our communications area to free up some money to revamp our website, including our logo. And one of the first things we tackled when I came in, and we've got a great resource. We've got a special link there just for COVID-19 updates. And that'll tell you every one of the auto insurance companies that are refunding premiums, as well as our bulletins that are out there, and that kind of thing. So that's a great resource, is our website, OID.OK.gov. I'll remind people that we have a consumer assistance area, 1-800-522-0071. And they're there to help folks with claims. You have a problem with a claim, contact the insurance department. They'll get in touch with the insurance company and go to work on your behalf. And then finally, Ryan, I think I would just say, our theme for the past year, I think we launched it last March, has been a little bit hokey maybe, but Mulready says, get ready. Mm-hmm. And so I would just remind folks, yes, this is a crazy time. We're in the middle of this pandemic. You're staying at home, but remind you, it is April, and storm season, as we're experiencing even today, is upon us. And so get ready, be prepared for what's coming. So that's about it. Get ready. Go to our website. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep, absolutely. Stay ready and stay prepared. From resources of the insurance department's website, is it OID.OK.gov?
That's right. Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you again for your time, Commissioner. Greatly appreciate it. And we look forward to hopefully having you on in a similar forum, but maybe either in person or in something that's not dubbed Quarantine Corner. Well, we're enjoying doing this for now, but ready for this to definitely be in the review. So
I hear you.
The time.
Thanks, Ryan.